There they go, there they go. There's blood on her shoe. The shoe is too small, not the right bride at all, the two white pigeons cried in the Grimm brothers' version of Cinderella. This topic should be important to you because not all fairy tales come from a happy place. It has a, many fairy tales have evolved with the dark turns through centuries and decades of being told by mouth and through literature. To illustrate this, we go to Italy in 1634. In the Children's Literature Podcast, with no date listed, TQ and Chloe Townsend takes us through the written literature of Giambattista Basile and the literature of his stories, the Pentamerone. In this version of Cinderella, her name is Zezola, and she loses her mother in the very beginning. When her father remarries, she gets a Zezola herself gets a governess who helps take care of her, teaches her many things, and loves her like her own daughter. She then says that she wishes that her governess was her mother instead of the other stepmother, which then her governess convinces her to kill her stepmother so that she can remarry her father instead. So Zezola does kill her stepmother and convinces her father to marry the governess instead. This happiness and caringness of the governess only lasted about a month, and then she brought in 6 of her own daughters who ridiculed and treated Zezola very badly, making her clean up after them and do laundry and chores around the house, much like the stories that we know today. And they ended up calling her Cinderella. When her father goes off on a trip, he asks the daughters what they would like for his return. Zezola only asks for a branch that hits his head, and the first branch that hits his head was from a date tree. When he brings this back, she plants it on her mother's grave and cries over top of it so that it grows. When the plant starts to grow, a special fairy comes out and grants her many wishes to allow her to go to the ball put on by the royal prince, and the rest of it follows through, pretty similar to the fairy tales that we know today. Next, we read the Brothers Grimm's version of Cinderella, found on the Fairy Tales website, published in March of 2021. It takes us through Wilhelm and Jacob Grimm's story that gets much more gruesome than the previous story. In this story, a difference is Cinderella gets a hazel tree that she plants, and from this hazel tree, 2 white doves um, create their home in this tree, and they start to bring her gifts, and her wishes become true. Along with the story, she is able to go to the ball to meet her prince, where she escapes multiple nights, and on the last night, she loses her shoe, much like the story we know now. But when the prince tries to find who belongs to the shoe, he comes to the house and he asks the first stepdaughter to try on the shoe. The shoe, of course, does not fit her, and she cuts off one of her own toes to make the shoe fit. As he carries the princess away, the doves in the 2 trees cry out that there's blood in her shoe and it is too small. She is not the right princess at all. So he comes back, and the second sister, she tries on the shoe, and of course it's much too small. So she cuts off a piece of her heel to try and fit the tree. The prince takes her away, and as they're riding through, the white doves cry out, "There's blood in her shoe. The shoe is much too small." The stepmother convinced these daughters to cut their pieces of their feet because she said, "Cut the toe off, for when you are queen, you will never have to go on foot. And cut the heel, for when you are queen, you will never have to go on foot." But once the prince came back and realized that neither of these women were the prince, he found Zezola and was able to find out that she did, of course, fit the shoe. So then when they went on to get married, the sisters showed up to the wedding reception, And the two white doves then again showed up and picked out their eyes for being mean to Cinderella and for showing up to the wedding. And so they went on blind from there. And the rest of the story is very similar to the ones that we know today. And lastly, the versions that we know today of Walt Disney from 1950. He first published this in New York, and with no author or date listed, the history, debut, and impact of Disney's classic Cinderella takes us through the history of the first premiere. The movie first premiered after World War II. Many people were very down, of course, and there was not very much money to be able to produce these movies. But they went to New York, they did a bunch of fundraising, and they were able to produce this movie that catapulted Disney's career along with Bambi and other similar ones. Please go. This movie sparked feelings of love, allowing adults to even feel like the princesses. It's a much cleaner version. There's no heel cutting, of course, no eyes picking out. It focuses around true love and coming from rags to riches story. In conclusion, there are 800 versions of the classic Disney princess tale that we know today, but with, of course, as you see, the many dark turns. So in review, we started in Italy in 1634, where Zazula is forced to kill her stepmother to get a new stepmother who ends up doing the same thing and being just as mean to her. The Brothers Grimms, they have people cut off their feet and cut off their toes, but yet the small still win in the end. And Disney's Beloved Fairy Tale by Walt Disney brings us kind of back to the beginning. Fairy tales are always different throughout the different centuries. And a quote from Walt Disney himself said, "I want to be hit right here in the heart. You pulled for Cinderella, you felt for Cinderella. And with any laugh, there must be a tear somewhere." Thank you.